Lacks gun laws that allow guns to get into the hands of criminals and unstable people. I now recognize the gentlelady from California, Ms. Porter, for an opening statement.
I represent a community in mourning. Less than 1 month ago in Laguna Woods, a gunman locked the doors to the Geneva Presbyterian Church and opened fire on my community's tight-knit Taiwanese congregation. This shooting was an undeniable tragedy, but under different circumstances, it could have been an unimaginable massacre. Unlike the shooters in Uvalde and Buffalo, the shooter in Laguna Woods did not carry an assault rifle equipped with high-capacity magazines. He was armed with 9mm handguns that forced him to reload. That difference gave a hero, Dr. John Cheng, a chance to stop the carnage. He sacrificed his life to stop the shooter, and his bravery was remarkable. But we cannot depend on a hero's bravery to save lives. Law enforcement has determined that the gunman was ready to kill every person in the church. Had he been armed with a military-style assault rifle, he may have done so. There is no telling how many more lives would have been lost. Shootings involving assault weapons are 6 times as deadly as shootings involving handguns. And when assault weapons are equipped with high-capacity magazines or bump stocks, the death toll rises even further. California has banned these weapons for years. Our laws have saved lives, including members of Geneva Presbyterian Church. Congress must follow California's lead. I yield back.
The lady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a sober day in Congress as we reflect upon the challenges our nation faces. In 2005, as a young cop, I was dispatched to reports of a man down in the street in part of the city that was crime-ridden and dangerous. I found a victim, a teenager, and I held the mortal wound in the back of his head and whispered prayer into his ear as his life flowed from his body. He died there in my arms on the street. He was killed by an axe handle. I am prayerful for America. I'm prayerful for healing, and I'm prayerful for discernment amongst this body and my colleagues. As a law enforcement officer, I know what it means to swear an oath to protect and serve my community and my nation, and the importance of bringing justice to the families of those who suffer at the hands of evil. And it is essential that the fundamental freedoms, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, are always protected and preserved by this body. I was sworn as a man, I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and I will never back down from defending that Constitution, including the rights of law-abiding Americans to keep and bear arms. Madam Chair, I thank you for this hearing today, and I yield.
The gentleman yields. Now we will introduce our witnesses. I'd like to turn it over to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Higgins, to introduce our first witness. Without objection, Mr. Higgins is authorized to participate in today's hearing. He represents Buffalo, and you are now recognized, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member, the honorable members of the Oversight and Reform Committee. The Greek tragic poet Aeschylus says that we suffer our way to wisdom. He says we suffer our way to wisdom. To live is to suffer, to endure the suffering is to give meaning to the suffering. We have a problem in this country. Unless we learn from the tragic events of the last 3 weeks, who are we as a people? And this brave group of panelists from 2 cities that were devastated, a destruction beyond human comprehension, We have to find a way to deal with this. In Buffalo, the shooting started at 2:30 in the afternoon and was concluded in 2 minutes and 3 seconds. One shooter, a semi-automatic weapon, 13 people shot, 10 dead, one shooter. If you look for a common denominator in all of these, it's typically someone that should never have had a gun with a high-capacity weapon to kill as many people as quickly as possible. Zanetta Everhart is here. She is a friend and a proud citizen of the city of Buffalo. Zanetta is with us today as the mother of a Buffalo mass shooting survivor, Zaire Goodman. Zaire was working at the Tops Friendly Market that was targeted by a white supremacist, racist, deranged gunman. Zaire is also a colleague in government. She is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for my friend and colleague, New York State Senator Tim Kennedy. Zanetta's story is both tragic and magic. And with that, it gives me great honor to present to the committee Zanetta Everhart.
Thank you. And after Ms. Everhart, we will hear from Dr. Roy Guerrero, who is a pediatrician in Uvalde, Texas. Then we will hear from Mia Cerrillo, who is a 4th grader at Robb Elementary School in Texas. Mia will be sharing her experience in a pre-recorded video. Her father, Miguel, is with us in the room today and will be making brief remarks after his daughter's video. Then he will excuse himself. Next, we will hear from Felix and Kimberly Rubio, who are the parents of Lexi Rubio, who tragically lost her life in the Texas shooting. I now recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Heiss, to introduce our last witness on this panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my honor to recognize Lucretia Hughes. She is a part of my constituency, an incredibly bright light in our 10th district, and she has an extremely compelling story. I just wanted to publicly recognize Lucretia. I want to thank you for being here today. I know it's hard to share the story that you come to us with, but we are grateful that you're here. And I just, Madam Chair, I want to say thank you for just these few seconds to recognize Lucretia Hughes and welcome her here. I yield.
Thank you. The witnesses will be unmuted so we can swear them in. Please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and without objection, your written statements will be made part of the record. With that, Ms. Everhart, you are now recognized for your testimony. Please testify, Ms. Everhart.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Zaire, my son Goodman, my son, or as I like to call him, the kid, was shot and injured by a domestic terrorist on Saturday, May 14, 2022, at the Tops grocery store where he was an employee in a historically Black community on Jefferson Avenue in Buffalo, New York. Zaire, the kid, is now a 21-year-old man. He's pure joy. He's everything that is good in this world. And as I sit here before you today, I can hear my son telling me to stop being extra and get to the point. I was going to tell you all a bunch of fluffy, funny stories about Zaire, but I have a message. So I'll get to the point. As Director of Diversity and Inclusion with New York State Senator Tim Kennedy's office, stories of gun violence and racism are all too familiar, but now these stories are Zaire stories. These problems literally knocked on my front door. These are issues that as a country we do not like to openly discuss. Domestic terrorism exists in this country for 3 reasons. America is inherently violent. This is who we are as a nation. The very existence of this country was founded on violence, hate, and racism, with the near annihilation of my Native brothers and sisters. My ancestors brought to America through the slave trade were the first currency of America. Let me say that again for the people in the back. My ancestors, the first currency of America, were stripped of their heritage and culture, separated from their families, bargained for on auction blocks, sold, beaten, raped, and lynched. Yet I continuously hear after every mass shooting that this is not who we are as Americans and as a nation. Hear me clearly. This is exactly who we are. Education. Majority of what I have learned about African American history, I did not learn until I went to college, and I had to choose those classes. Why is that? Why is African American history not a part of American history? African Americans built this country from the ground up. My ancestors' blood is embedded in the soil. We have to change the curriculum in schools across the country so that we may adequately educate our children. Reading about history is crucial to the future of this country. Learning about other cultures, ethnicities, and religions in school should not be something that is up for debate. We cannot continue to whitewash education, creating generations of children to believe that one race of people are better than the other. Our differences should make us curious, not angry. At the end of the day, I bleed, you bleed. We are all human. That awful day that will now be a part of the history books, hopefully, let us not forget to add that horrific day to the curriculum that we teach our children. Guns. The 18-year-old terrorist who stormed into my community armed with an AR-15, killing 10 people and injuring 3 others, received a shotgun from his parents for his 16th birthday. For Zaire's 16th birthday, I bought him a few video games, some headphones, a pizza, and a cake. We are not the same. How and why? And what in the world is wrong with this country? Children should not be armed with weapons. Parents who provide their children with guns should be held accountable. Lawmakers who continuously allow these mass shootings to continue by not passing stricter gun laws should be voted out. To the lawmakers who feel that we do not need stricter gun laws, let me paint a picture for you. My son, Zaire, has a hole in the right side of his neck, 2 on his back, and another on his left leg, caused by an exploding bullet from an AR-15. As I clean his wounds, I can feel pieces of that bullet in his back. Shrapnel will be left inside of his body for the rest of his life. Now I want you to picture that exact scenario for one of your children. This should not be your story or mine. As an elected official, it is your duty to draft legislation that protects Zaire and all of the children and citizens in this country. Common sense gun laws are not about your personal feelings or beliefs. You are elected because you have been chosen and are trusted to protect us. But let me say to you here today, I do not feel protected. No citizen needs an AR-15. These weapons are designed to do the most harm in the least amount of time. And on Saturday, May 14th, it took a domestic terrorist just 2 minutes to shoot and kill 10 people and injure 3 others. If after hearing from me and the other people testifying here today does not move you to act on gun laws, I invite you to my home to help me clean Zaire's wounds so that you may see up close the damage that has been caused to my son and to my community. To the families of Ruth Whitfield, Pearl Young, Catherine Massey, Hayward Patterson, Celestine Cheney, Geraldine Talley, Aaron Salter, Andre McNeil, Marcus Morrison, and Roberta Drury, I promise that their deaths will not be in vain. Zaire and I promise to use our voice to lift their names, and we will carry their spirit with us as we embark on this journey to create change. I know that their collective souls watched out for Zaire that day, and I am eternally grateful to them for that. To the east side of Buffalo, I love you. I'm speaking directly to my people, to my hood. from Bailey to Broadway to Kensington to Fillmore to Delavan to Jefferson and every street in between. Just like the potholes that we want filled in, yes, I keep it real, together we will continue to fill those streets with love, no matter what people say about the east side of Buffalo. We will not be broken. I was born there, raised there. I raised my son there, I still live there, and I do the majority of my professional work on the east side of Buffalo. I vow to you today that everywhere I go, I will make sure that the people hear the real stories of our people. For too long, our community has been neglected and starved of the resources that we so greatly need. I promise that I will not stop pushing for more resources to be funneled into the east side of Buffalo. Each and every person that lives within that community, we are family. Not a perfect community, but I know that we are love. To the greater Buffalo area, to everyone from around the country and the world who have reached out and loved on us. On behalf of Zaire's father, Damian Goodman, my mother, my father, my sisters, my brothers, and myself, we thank you. We thank you for all of your thoughts and your prayers. Thank you for all of the love and support you have shown us during this difficult time. But I also say to you today, with a heart full, from the outpouring of love that you also freely gave us, your thoughts and prayers are not enough. We need you to stand with us in the days, weeks, months, and years to come, and be ready to go to work and help us to create the change that this country so desperately needs. And I will end with a quote from Charles Bloom in his book, The Devil We Know. Race, as we have come to understand it, is a fiction, but racism, as we have come to live it, is a fact. The point here is not to impose a new racial hierarchy, but to remove an existing one. After centuries of waiting for white majorities to overturn white supremacy, it is to me that it has fallen to Black people to do it themselves. And I stand at the ready. Zaire, this is for you, kid. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Dr. Guerrero, you are now recognized for your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Dr. Roy Guerrero. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and was president at Uvalde Memorial Hospital the day of the massacre on May 24th, 2022 at Robb Elementary School. I was called here today as a witness, but I showed up because I am a doctor. Because how many years ago I swore an oath to do no harm. After witnessing firsthand the carnage in my hometown of Uvalde, to stay silent would have betrayed that oath. Inaction is harm. Passivity is harm. Delay is harm. So here I am, not to plead, not to beg or convince you of anything, but to do my job, and hope that by doing so, it inspires the members of this House to do theirs. I've lived in Uvalde my whole life. In fact, I attended Robb Elementary School myself as a kid. As often is the case, with us grown-ups, we remember a lot of the good and not so much of the bad. So I don't recall homework or detention. I remember how much I loved going to school. What a joyful time it was. Back then, we were able to run between classrooms with ease to visit our friends. And I remember the way the cafeteria smelled at lunchtime on Hamburger Thursdays. It was right around lunchtime on a Tuesday that the gunman entered the school through a main door without restriction, massacred 19 students and 2 teachers, and changed the way that every student at Robb and their families remember that school forever. I doubt they'll remember the smell of the cafeteria or the laughter ringing in the hallways. Instead, they'll be haunted by the memory of screams and bloodshed, panic and chaos, police shouting, parents wailing. I know I will never forget what I saw that day. For me, that day started like any typical Tuesday in our pediatric clinic. Moms calling for coughs, boogers, sports physicals, right before the summer rush. School was out in 2 days, then summer camps would guarantee some grazes and ankle sprains, injuries that could be patched up and fixed with a Mickey Mouse sticker as a reward. Then at 12:30, business as usual stopped, and with it, my heart. A colleague from a San Antonio trauma center texted me and said, "Why are pediatric surgeons and anesthesiologists on call for a mass shooting in Uvalde?" I raced to the hospital to find parents outside yelling children's names in desperation and sobbing as they begged for any news related to their child. Those mothers' cries I will never get out of my head. As I entered the chaos of the ER, the first casualty I came across was Mia Cerrillo. She was sitting in the hallway. Her face was still clearly in shock, but her whole body was shaking from the adrenaline coursing through it. The white Lilo and Stitch shirt that she wore was covered in blood, and her shoulder was bleeding from a shrapnel injury. Sweet Mia, I've known her my whole life. As a baby, she survived major liver surgeries against all odds. And once again, she's here as a survivor, inspiring us with her story today and her bravery. When I saw Mia sitting there, I remembered having seen her parents outside. So after quickly examining 2 other patients of mine in the hallway with minor injuries, I raced outside to let them know that Mia was alive. I wasn't ready for their next urgent and desperate question. Where's Elena? Elena is Mia's 8-year-old sister, who was also at Rob at the time of the shooting. I had heard from some of the nurses that there were 2 dead children who had been moved to the surgical area of the hospital. As I made my way there, I prayed that I wouldn't find her. I didn't find Elena. But what I did find was something no prayer will ever relieve. 2 children whose bodies had been pulverized by bullets fired at them, decapitated, whose flesh had been ripped apart, that the only clue as their identities was a blood-splattered cartoon clothes still clinging to them, clinging for life and finding none. I could only hope these 2 bodies were a tragic exception to the list of survivors. But as I waited there with my fellow Uvalde doctors, nurses, first responders, and hospital staff for other casualties we hope to save, they never arrived. All that remained was the bodies of 17 more children and the 2 teachers who cared for them, who dedicated their careers to nurturing and respecting the awesome potential of every single one, just as we doctors do. I'll tell you why I became a pediatrician, because I knew that children were the best patients. They accept the situation as it's explained to them. You don't have to coax them into changing their lifestyles in order to get better or plead them to modify their behavior as you do with adults. No matter how hard you try to help an adult, their path to healing is always determined by how willing they are to take action. Adults are stubborn. We're resistant to change, even when the change will make things better for ourselves, but especially when we think we're immune to the fallout. Why else would there have been such little progress made in Congress to stop gun violence? Innocent children all over the country today are dead because laws and policy allows people to buy weapons before they're legally old enough to even buy a pack of beer. They're dead because restrictions have been allowed to lapse. They're dead because there are no rules about where guns are kept, because no one is paying attention to who is buying them. The thing I can't figure out is whether our politicians are failing us out of stubbornness, passivity, or both. I said before that as grown-ups, we have a convenient habit of remembering the good and forgetting the bad. Never more so than when it comes to our guns. Once the blood is rinsed away from the bodies of our loved ones and scrubbed off the floors of the schools and supermarkets and churches, the carnage from each scene is erased from our collective conscience, and we return again to nostalgia, to the rose-tinted view of our Second Amendment as a perfect instrument of American life, no matter how many lives are lost. I chose to be a pediatrician. I chose to take care of children. Keeping them safe from preventable diseases, I can do. Keeping them safe from bacteria and brittle bones, I can do. But making sure our children are safe from guns, that's the job of our politicians and leaders. In this case, you are the doctors, and our country is the patient. We are lying on the operating table, riddled with bullets like the children of Robb Elementary and so many other schools. We are bleeding out and you are not there. My oath as a doctor means that I signed up to save lives. I do my job. And I guess it turns out that I am here to plead, to beg, to please, please do yours.
Thank you. We will now play the video from Mia.
My name is Mia Cedillo, and I go to Robb Elementary. We were just watching a movie, and then she got an email, and then she went to go lock the door, and he was in the hallway, and they made eye contact, and then she went back in the room and she told us, go hide, and then we went to go hide behind my teacher's desk and behind the backpacks, and then he shot the little window, and then he went to the other classroom, and then he went, there's a door between our classrooms, and he went to there and shot my teacher and told my teacher goodnight and shot her in the head. And then he shot some of my classmates and the whiteboard. When I went to the backpacks, he shot my friend that was next to me, and I thought he was gonna come back to the room, so I grabbed the blood and I put it all over me. And
What did you do then when you put the blood on yourself?
just stay quiet, and then I got my teacher's phone and called 911.
And what did you tell 911?
I told her that we need help and to send the police in our classroom.
If there was something that you want people to know about that day and about you, right? Or things that you want different, what would it be?
To have security.
Do you feel safe at school? Why not?
Because I don't want it to happen again.
And you think it's gonna happen again?
Mr. Soria, you're now recognized.
Hello, today I come because I could have lost my baby girl. She is not the same little girl that I used to play with, hang around with, and do everything, because she was daddy's little girl. I have 5 kids, and she's the middle child. I don't know what to do, because I think I would have lost my baby girl. My baby girl is the world, 'cause not only once, but twice, she came back to us. She's everything, not only for me, but her siblings and her mother. I thank y'all for letting me be here and speak out, but I wish something will change, not only for our kids, but every single kid in the world, because schools are not safe anymore. Something needs to really change. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and I understand you are now leaving. We thank you for sharing your story. Thank you, and Mr. and Mrs. Rubio, you are now recognized for your testimony.
I am Kimberly Rubio. This is Felix Rubio. We're the parents of Alexandria Anaya, best known as Lexi Rubio, and 5 other children, who all attended Uvalde Public Schools during the 2021 to 2022 school year. Calissa, who completed high school this year, Isaiah, who attends Uvalde High School, David Morales Junior High, Jalila Flores Elementary, and our 2 youngest children, Julian 8 and Lexi 10, who were at Robb Elementary. On the morning of May 24th, 2022, I dropped Lexi and Julian off at school a little after 7 a.m. My husband and I returned to the campus at 8 a.m. for Julian's award ceremony, and again at 10:30 a.m. for Lexi's award ceremony. Lexi received the Good Citizen Award and was also recognized for receiving all A's. At the conclusion of the ceremony, we took photos with her before asking her to pose for a picture with her teacher, Mr. Reyes. That photo, her last photo ever, was taken at approximately 10:54 a.m. To celebrate, we promised to get her ice cream that evening. I told her we loved her and we would pick her up after school. I could still see her walking with us toward the exit. In the reel that keeps scrolling across my memories, she turns her head and smiles back at us to acknowledge my promise. And then we left. I left my daughter at that school, and that decision will haunt me for the rest of my life. Afterward, Felix dropped me off at my office, the Uvalde Leader News, and returned home because it was a rare day off for him between normal shifts and security gigs he takes to help make ends meet. I got situated at my desk and began writing about a new business in town when the news office started hearing commotion on the police scanner, a shooting on Diaz Street near Robb Elementary. It wasn't long before we received word from my son's teacher that they were safe, secure in the classroom. Once evacuated from campus, the children were reunited with parents and guardians at the Civic Center. My dad picked up Julian from the Civic Center and took him to my grandmother's house. One of our Robb kids was safe. We focused on finding Lexi. Bus after bus arrived, but she wasn't on board. We heard there were children at the local hospital, so we drove over to provide her description. She wasn't there. My dad drove an hour and a half to San Antonio to check with the university hospital. At this point, some part of me must have realized that she was gone. In the midst of chaos, I had the urge to return to Robb. We didn't have our car at this point. Traffic was everywhere. So I ran barefoot with my flimsy sandals in my hand. I ran a mile to the school, my husband with me. We sat outside for a while before it became clear we wouldn't receive an answer from law enforcement on scene. San Antonio firefighter eventually gave us a ride back to the Civic Center, where the district was asking all families who had not been reunited with their children to gather. Soon after, we received the news that our daughter was among the 19 students and 2 teachers that died as a result of gun violence. We don't want you to think of Lexi as just a number. She was intelligent, compassionate, and athletic. She was quiet, shy unless she had a point to make. But she knew she was right. She so often was. She stood her ground. She was firm, direct, voice unwavering. So today, we stand for Lexi, and as her voice, we demand action. We seek a ban on assault rifles and high-capacity magazines. We understand that for some reason, to some people, to people with money, to people who fund political campaigns, that guns are more important than children. So at this moment, we ask for progress. We seek to raise the age to purchase these weapons from 18 to 21 years of age. We seek red flag laws, stronger background checks. We also want to repeal gun manufacturers' liability immunity. You've all seen glimpses of who Lexi was, but I also want to tell you a little bit about who she would have been. If given the opportunity, Lexi would have made a positive change in this world. She wanted to attend St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas, on a softball scholarship. She wanted to major in math and go on to attend law school. That opportunity was taken from her. She was taken from us. I'm a reporter, a student, a mom, a runner. I've read to my children since they were in the womb. My husband is a law enforcement officer, an Iraq war veteran. He loves fishing and our babies. Somewhere out there, there's a mom listening to our testimony, thinking, I can't even imagine their pain, not knowing that our reality will one day be hers, unless we act now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Hughes, you are now recognized for your testimony.
Honorable Chairwoman Maloney, Ranking Member Comer, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to be here today to address the violence in our country. My name is Lucretia Hughes Kluken. I have 4 children and 9 grandchildren. On the night of April the 2nd, 2016, my family got a phone call that would change our lives forever. My ex-husband answered the phone and let out a blood-curdling scream, a scream of pain from the depths of his soul. He screamed, he cried, he's gone, he is gone. Our 19-year-old son, Emmanuel, went to a party early that night. After we got the call, we was frantic. We called his phone, no one answered. We called even the police. I went to Facebook and I had to ask, is my son dead? I found out that he was shot point blank in the head and killed while playing dominoes. No one spoke up for weeks, and the killer was on the run. No one was going to snitch, but that is the street life. Words can't describe how hard it is to bury a child. I ache for anyone and all who have done the same. My son's death was a result of a criminal with an evil heart and a justice system failing to hold him accountable for the laws he had already broken. You see, a convicted felon killed my son with an illegally obtained gun. Our gun control lobbyists and politicians claim that their policies will save lives and reduce violence. Well, those policies did not save my son. The laws being discussed are already implemented in cities across this country. We have decades of evidence proving they do not work. St. Louis, New York, Chicago, Washington, Atlanta are gun control utopias, and they are plagued with the most violence. 10 more laws, 20 more laws, 1,000 more won't make what has already illegal more wrong or stop criminals from committing these crimes. And y'all are delusional if you think it's gonna keep us safe. I am a walking testimony of how the criminal justice system and the gun control laws, which is steeped in racism, by the way, have failed the Black community. By the age of 25, I had already went to 18 young Black men funeral at the age of 25. I have 1 Black man in jail, 1 Black man in the grave, and my young grandson gonna be raised without a father. And it's a curse on the Black community and everyone else's. Something has to change. Thoughts and prayers and calls for more gun control isn't enough. How about letting me defend myself from evil? You don't think that I'm capable and trustworthy to handle a firearm. You don't think that the Second Amendment doesn't apply to people that look like me? Who and you who would call for more gun controls are the same ones that are calling to defund the police. Who is supposed to protect us? We must prepare to be our own first responders to protect ourselves and our loved ones. I am a legal, law-abiding citizen, and I don't need the government to save me. I teach people how to use a firearm. I empower others to look at me to understand the Second Amendment is their right. I am a proud member of the DC Project, Women for Gun Rights. We believe that education is the key to safety, not ineffective legislation. We support meaningful solutions that will actually save lives. We support the Safe Student Act, HR 7415, which would immediately make schools safer. In hindsight, of Parkland, We saw failure of the government at every level failing the students. Students saw something and they said something, and the school did not act. Police were called to his residence over 30 times, and they did not act. And finally, the police did not go into their school that fateful day and failed to protect those kids. We need to secure our schools, and we gotta secure this building, or like y'all do. What's the difference? We call on Congress to ban gun-free zones, fund nonpartisan firearm education programs like Kids Safe Foundation, and non-governmental mental health organizations like Hold My Guns. And in closing, I claim that nothing in these bills do anything to make us safer or address the mental health crisis in this country. Despite living with the heartache of losing my son on a daily basis, I believe it is our God-given right to defend ourselves from any act of violence, making it more difficult or even more expensive for me and people that look like me and other